So I have a special guest on the Boost Health podcast today. His name is Andrew Sillitoe. He has a really interesting background that I think makes him very well suited to help us find our wellness balance, which is what we always talk about here. He is a business psychologist, a performance coach, a public speaker, and an author, and he's from Kent, England. And he's blending 20 years of experience as an elite international sportsman and coach, along with 3 published books and an acclaimed TED Talk. And Andrew's innovative and straight-talking views on leadership, teamwork, and strategy has resulted in his advice and guidance being sought after by key figures at several FTSE 100 companies. In 1997, Andrew made the move from Canada to pursue a professional roller hockey career and develop his coaching skills. And he succeeded in both, becoming the first British player to play professionally while his thriving business coaching business was born. And in 2004, he moved into the corporate world as a sales and marketing consultant for Yellow Pages. In 2007, his unique and visionary approach in business saw him headhunted by a consultancy to speak about a winning mindset. And just a year later, he developed a new method to enable elite athletes and business leaders to fulfill their potential. And this was actually the seed that eventually blossomed into his renowned 4 Keys approach. And he's got an awesome book called The 4 Keys we're going to talk about a lot today. I really like his 4 Keys, and you'll see how it is very similar to the 7 wellness dimensions that we talk about here on the show all the time. Now, after competing in 11 inline hockey world championships for Team Great Britain, in 2010, he was actually offered the perfect platform on which to try out his innovative strategies as the head coach of Team Great Britain. Now, with Andrew at the helm, they won gold and promotion for the first time into Pool A at the IIHF World Championships 9 months later. So super, super cool. He's obviously skilled in business and in athletics, which is awesome. Now, buoyed by the success of his approach, Andrew headed back to the books to strengthen his methodologies with some academic rigor, and eventually resulted in a master's in organizational psychology at Birkbeck University. In 2013, he wrote about his work in a book called Managing the Mist: How to Develop Winning Mindsets and Create High-Performing Teams. Now, you can see how he would probably figure that out after creating a gold medal team. Now, these days, Andrew speaks to aspiring entrepreneurs and business leaders all around the world, with Pfizer, Ericsson, Nationwide, Virgin Media, and BBC are among the global corporations who've turned to Andrew to empower its leaders to take full responsibility in their business, body, relationships, and mindset. He does this with plain English and molds together a range of techniques from his background in professional sport, business psychology, and well-being. So it's a big intro, Andrew, but he had so many cool things. I wanted to make sure we included all of it. So thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it, buddy.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Really, it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I just want to remind everybody, we're going to be talking about a lot of different things today, and there's going to be links to all of the resources that we talk about in the show notes and blogs. So you can go back and check out everything that we talk about today. So Andrew, I don't know if you knew this, but we actually have something similar that I think probably pushes us along in our career and in life. We both had our fathers pass away really young. Your dad was 48. He passed away from a heart attack. My dad was only 51. He had pancreatic cancer. You and I were both fairly young when our dads passed away. There's a lot of different paths you can sort of take when that happens to you as a young individual. Obviously, there's some really bad paths. There's some good paths, whatever. And I work really, really hard to make sure this terrible occurrence inspires me to learn and teach as much as I can about wellness. That's sort of the path I've taken. Was your father passing away at a young age motivating to you in the work you do now?
I think it was certainly motivating for me at the time to live my life and to follow my dream, my passion. It wasn't really until later when I made the connection between my purpose of working with business owners and business leaders, and even the time that I worked in the corporate world. I worked for a company called Yellow Pages, so I was working with a lot of small to medium-sized businesses, working on their strategy, and I could see my dad in a lot of the people that I was working with. And my dad had grown a business, gone all in on his business, and but let other facets of his life perhaps take over He enjoyed the good life, and that caught up with him. And so that's always been on my mind. So health has been on my mind, certainly. So that's been a key thing. But I would say it was more in the last 10 years, maybe even less, where I started to really see the connection between my purpose, getting out of bed to do this work, and hoping that I can make a difference with business leaders and owners. My dad died in the early hours of Monday morning, and it's about 10 years ago, I found a study that said that 20% more people die in the early hours of Monday morning because they're brought on by stress and anxiety. And so that really triggered something in me. And what could I do to work with organizations to help them to think seriously about that? People should be thriving on, and not anxious about going to work the next day.
That's a really beautiful way to put it, because gosh, if you're even if you're super successful with your business and you haven't taken care of there's 6 other dimensions to wellness besides just your career. And so if you're not tapping into these other dimensions and paying attention to them, it can really be hard on you. Well,
absolutely. I really like those dimensions you talk about. It's the first time, I'd seen them when you presented them to me. And they make a lot of sense.
Well, let's talk about your dimensions or your keys, because like I said, and we'll talk more about how they sort of interrelate with the 6 dimensions, but I really like the way you approach it, because it taps into the different dimensions. And it's also, I think it's easy for people to remember and sort of tick those boxes every day. Your book, the full name of the book is The 4 Keys: How to Win in Your Business, Body, Relationships, and Mindset. So can you quickly just tell us a little bit about each one of those 4 keys and why you chose them as the important 4 for us to balance?
Sure. So I think with a sports background, body and mindset are the two, looking after the body, being healthy, training, working on skills, and then mindset, the psychology of being able to perform at the best level, has always been something. And then I guess as I started to work with businesses, I started to recognize that there is this business element, but even as an athlete, there's this business element. One of the things we used to talk about with Team GB, bearing in mind that all amateur players, we're there for business, and to get into that mindset that we are here to do business. So business, body, and mindset were always the 3 key strands for me. But interestingly, I'd always reflected on how my performance was better if my relationship was okay. If I went to the World Championships and, for whatever reason, my partner at the time wasn't happy about me leaving, or something was going on, the relationship was challenging, then it would affect my game. And I always reflected on it, but I'd never really made never looked at it, as a thing that I should kind of explore. It was just there. But I knew that some of my best tournaments when I wasn't in a relationship, for example, when I was just focused on playing. So that did play on my mind. And then really the real catalyst was the fact that I started my business in 2012. I was working with the British team. The world was great for me. I'd written a book. We'd been promoted into Pool A. My business was thriving. And then my wife turned around one day and said, I didn't sign up for this. And this is not the type of lifestyle or relationship that I thought we were going to have. I was traveling a lot. I had my eldest daughter, so my wife was the stepmother of my eldest daughter, so she would take on responsibility for that, and I would go off and do the work. And I realized that kind of all came crashing down around me, and I realized actually this relationship piece is hugely important for whether you're an athlete or a business owner or a business leader. That we have to we have to do the work in our relationships. And people say, behind every good man is a good woman, and vice versa. But I would say behind every good business is a strong relationship. And I started sharing this idea with some of my clients. I had a small group of people that I was working with. I guess you could call it a mastermind, although we didn't refer to it at the time. But I had a group of leaders, and I just started sharing my experience. And there was just consensus that this was a real challenge. Time with the kids, time with the partner, building in time, being proactive. So we started doing this work, and we started talking about business body relationships mindset, and it seemed to resonate with them. What was interesting about 3 months in was that I would say, well, do you want me to run a workshop on client acquisition or something business related? And the feedback, and it was a catalyst really for me, was, you know what, we're going all in on our body, our relationships and our mindset. I'm healthier than I've ever been. You know, people would say I'm people in their mid-40s that had never really taken their health seriously, was just feeling more productive, more energized, more focused. Their relationships were in check, and they were doing things like meditating, which they'd never even imagined doing before. Right. And they said the business is just taking care of itself. It literally is taking care of itself. I'm coming into work as the best version of myself because everything else is working. And I think it's a real message, because we often go, you know, we've got to go and work our business, make money, and everything else should be fine. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it's so hard to concentrate on work if you don't have things in order with your relationships, right? Whether it's at business or at home, you can't concentrate and you can't be productive. That's really one of the things I like that you say, though, Andrew, that I think is important that takes this from a concept to actionable is you say you put in the work. You put in the work in each of these 4 keys. And what, again, just drawing the line between this and the 7 wellness dimensions is you have different energy blocks that you can put into each one of your wellness dimensions. And that's the exact same thing that you mean by work. You may not need to necessarily put in, 50% of your energy into physical. Maybe your physical part of it is sort of on autopilot, but you dang well may need to put 50% of it into your relationships or your social or emotional wellness. So understanding that it's not just going to be something that you pay attention to, but that you actually have to put energy or work. I like work because it actually makes people think it's not going to be easy necessarily. It's going to require effort.
It's hard. Mm-hmm. No, it's hard and it's relentless, and we take our foot off the gas and we go, and then all of a sudden things start to shake and it can break down. So it is actually quite relentless. It is, in the book I talk about the foundations, and one of the foundations is do the work. If you want a strong business, do the work. If you want a strong relationship, do the work. It's not really about work-life balance. People say to me, I talk about bringing balance because people understand that. So it is about bringing balance back to our lives, but it's about doing the work in those four key areas.
Well, and I'm almost like, work-life balance for me is almost becoming like a meme because work is occupational wellness. Yes, that's important. That's one of 7. But life, how many dimensions of wellness does that include? That includes all of them. It's not work-life balance. It's occupational, it's social, it's emotional. It's like you talk about with body and relationships and mindset. These are all buckets within life. It's not just work-life balance. If you think of it as a 50-50, you're already off. It's not 50-50.
Yeah. You're not going to keep up.
Yeah, never.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Another thing that I like that you do is you set a timeline. And I think there's probably some science behind this, but I want to hear you speak to it because I've seen some of it. You put in a 90-day plan sort of at the get-go for people to get started, to put in the work initially. What was the theory or the science behind the 90 days?
It's just focus, really. I mean, I'd come from a business strategy background, 3-year plans, 5-year business plans, and 6 months into those plans, the world changed, the landscape changed, the economy changed. So what I noticed that I would start focusing on 100-day projects with clients, and sometimes 20-day projects, and then 90 days. Whether, I don't know, it's over here we call it soccer, we call it football.
Right.
But it's 90 minutes. The game's 90 minutes here, so I don't have to have something, just that absolute focus. There's a beginning and an end. But what was interesting when I first started doing it myself was that, particularly with a small group that we had, that we started getting really good results, and we got so excited we would be thinking about doing them back to back. But that is when the burnout creeps in. And what I've noticed is that you can do one 90-day game plan a year, and there's some sort of compound effect that happens. So one of the things I talk about is stretching ourselves, getting out of our comfort zone, holding that stretch for a period of time, like 90 days, for example. and then you go back to your comfort zone. But because you've stretched yourself, you are probably going to be fitter, leaner. You're probably going to be the business has grown because we've built a pipeline out. The relationship is stronger because we've done the work around that, and we've got some sort of clarity and peace of mind around mindset because we're taking the time to slow down. I talk about slowing down to speed up a lot. So that even just one 90-day game plan in January can set you up for the entire year. It doesn't have to be this relentless go all the time, but some focused sort of aggressive action for a period of time can really pay dividends.
Yeah, I like that. If you look at even just something as simple as like body transformation challenges, a lot of them are the 3-month or the 90 days. And that's because, you have to, start to mold this new you, like you're starting these new strategies and you have to give it time. There's going to be probably some flexing that has to occur where you're going off track and getting back on. So this sort of allows you to gain some momentum and make progress. So I really like that.
Yeah. And I've talked to boxing coaches, and 12 weeks is a great period of time to prepare for a fight. It's when I would always have the team picked before the World Championships, 3 months before the World Championships. Nice. We'd have that tense 90 days as a team preparing. So yeah, there are a number of things that kind of just got me thinking about this idea of 90-day game plan.
All right. Well, I want to sort of help people conceptualize, if they don't already know about the wellness dimensions. Let's bring that in and let's talk about the 4 keys together, because there's a lot of crossover. I think it's really important. So those that don't know about they actually started out as the 6 dimensions of wellness. It was started by Dr. Bill Kettler, and he's with it's now the National Wellness Institute, but he started these 6 dimensions of wellness back in 1976. So you can sort of picture it like a wheel, and each one of these dimensions of wellness are like spokes out into your wheel. So it's occupational, social, intellectual, physical, emotional, spiritual, and environmental. Now, as you hear Andrew talk about his 4 keys, I want you to think about how each one of these sort of plugs in and pulls from these different dimensions. You don't have to agree with me, Andrew. It's okay. But I think that what you've done with the 4 keys has a lot of similarities and pulling in from these different dimensions. And so in the last probably 10 years or so, with the urgency that we have with our environmental wellness, that's been added as a dimension. And it's really just about being aware and satisfied and understanding what your environment is and being well with your environment around you. So I don't know, would you agree that there's lots of integration between these dimensions and what you have with your 4 keys?
I think there's integration, definitely. I think there's some crossover. I think that, I'm proud of the 4 keys, but I think there are, I've been in this business of psychology and business psychology for a long time to know that there are lots of things that have been sort of bastardized and changed and improved, and and when we strip it all back, we get to the kind of some similarities. So I have no ego around that, but so definitely, the emotional and spiritual, you could argue, kind of sits within mindset.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, when I first moved into leadership development, this was back in 2007. We were told not to use the S word.
Right.
Word.
Yes.
Because, you go into a large corporate organization and you start talking about that kind of thing, spiritual leadership and so on. People, well, that's, I think it's more acceptable now. I think people seem to be a bit more, the fact that I can ask a group of 10 business leaders to consider meditation as a way to help their performance, I would have got laughed off the stage, 10 years ago. Sure. So there has been a shift, whether that's digital is playing a role in that, because we just need to try and find some space somehow. And, in that this digital world we're in, I don't know what the reasons are. But yeah, so definitely that stood out for me, the emotional and spiritual piece. And then, clearly there's some other things that kind of overlapped, business and so on.
Yeah. And that's a good point. Yeah. Spiritual is always sort of been woo woo up until even the last few years. And part of that's just because there's some dang good science coming out about the benefits of like gratitude journaling. If you spend 5 minutes of gratitude journaling a day, I think you improve your long-term health by overall almost 10%. It's just crazy to think about. But I mean, it's the science is there, and something as simple as just writing down what you're thankful for every day. It's a pretty good investment of time. And you can't sit down and gratitude journal for 5 minutes and just go, well, I feel like crap. That was a big waste of time. I mean, you're not going to feel like that.
Exactly. But it's just people taking the plunge to do these things, and that's the difference.
One of the things I think you and I are very similar in, Andrew, is I think we both like productivity. I'm just guessing here, but I saw you mentioned on Recruiter TV, you did an interview on Recruiter TV, which is really good. We'll link to it in the show notes. I want to share that. One thing you talked about was your morning routine and your productivity and how you're productive. And you try to get these 4 keys. You get up early like I do. So you get up at 5 on most days, which I'm pleading with people as much as possible. There's no such thing as early birds and night owls. No such thing. It takes 3 days. If you get up at 4:30 in a.m. for 3 days in a row, you will go to bed at 8:30. It won't be a problem. It takes a couple days, change your circadian rhythm, you'll be fine. But that's a whole other topic. But what I like that you do, Andrew, is you try to hit these 4 keys before 8 a.m. And I think it's a fantastic goal. Can you tell us a little bit, again, remind us what the 4 keys are and how you work to achieve this by 8 every day?
Yeah. So the 4 keys being business, body, relationships, and mindset. And I try to achieve everything before I leave the house. So my business, typically it might be to get a post out on LinkedIn, something that adds value to my business, and positions me as a thought leader. That's kind of one of the things I did consistently, and that was really, really good for me. Obviously, body is an obvious one to work out. And I try and role model now. Thinking of most of my clients are entrepreneurs, business owners, time precious, time poor, maybe have young families. So I'm constantly trying to role model that you don't have to be in the CrossFit box at 6 a.m. for an hour, destroy yourself every day. And I know there are people that really enjoy doing that. And I did CrossFit and I loved it, really enjoyed it. But now I'm just looking at my conservatory over there. I've a set of kettlebells. I go in, I do 20 minutes. I guess sort of between a strength session and some high intensity training to get that done. So usually I really target myself a half an hour so I can warm up but 30 minutes is key for me. Relationships, trying to do something nice. It's not always before 8 o'clock, but I will do the school run as often as I can for the kids, and so my wife can go and have her workout, and so we've got that balance. That we've got to kind of into a routine with that. So I try and do that 2 days a week, and then mindset. Recently, I found I did meditation. I like to shut it down for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes sometimes, even just as a cool down on my workout.
Oh, nice.
But have you heard of Darryl Edwards? Have you heard of Darryl Edwards?
Yes.
Yeah. So I've got friendly, and I really like what he's doing. So he has in his book, he has the postures. Yeah. So I try and do the postures, and I find that really the balance of sort of strength and breathing, some box breathing. So drawing on some of Mark Devine's work, and so just all of that, I can pretty much get done, before I get into the office.
I think that's fantastic, and I'm excited because I'm hitting the 4 keys as part of my morning routine as well. And something that you said, and you can appreciate this with your crossover with helping businesses be more productive and with team strategy. Are you familiar with doing the hardest thing first, or the first 90?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the concept of delayed gratification. Or there was another book, wasn't it? Eat the frog first, and that gets just the heavy lifting out the way.
Yeah. Yes. So you do your hardest thing first. And then there's a book by David Allen. It's called Getting Things Done. It's a very famous productivity book, and he's got something he calls the 2-minute drill, or the 2-minute model. And basically, if something is in that first 90-minute window, that should be an output task. So what I love about what you said is that you created something. You created something for your business, for LinkedIn, and that was an output task. You weren't checking email. You weren't checking social media. You were building something, or maybe it's, maybe it's working on a presentation or a big problem that you're working on, but it should be
it's pragmatic.
Yes. Something pragmatic, something that is building work, not just inputting something. And then the 2-minute drill that David Allen talks about is, okay, now after you've gotten through that first period of actually creating something, now you can go in and say, okay, this is an email. Is this going to take me 2 minutes to answer yes or no? And then you just move through a whole bunch of things and just check stuff off the list. But I love the fact that you're checking off your 4 keys before 8 a.m., which if you understand wellness balance, that's hard. That's probably one of the hardest things you're going to do for the day is checking those 4 keys. So I really like that. I know you work a lot with your what's the name of your group that you work with? You have like a Facebook group.
Yeah, well, we have a group on Facebook called, which is the Get Fit to Win.
Get Fit to Win
group.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that was kind of the brand. It's Andrew Sillitoe, and the brand was Get Fit to Win, and then obviously the 4 keys of the book. So I've tried sort of working with different groups in that respect.
So I think that's probably something you've probably encouraged folks in that group, right? Is to see if they can get their 4 keys ticked off before 8, right?
That's my recommendation, because why would you want to get home after work and then sit there thinking about the workout that you've got to do? It's now 8 o'clock and that's time away from the family. Get it done, and you can enjoy the rest of the day, the rest of, you don't have to think about these things. So it makes absolute sense to me. I in the book, I talk about 3 types of people that, from a productivity perspective. I think there are people that are naturally productive and they can't understand why people aren't productive and work in this particular way. Then there are people that kind of force themselves to do it. And then there are the last minute heroes who believe that if I just leave everything to the last minute, I'll perform better. I'll get everything done. There's very little evidence that suggests that they're going to perform very well. Maybe short term, but not long term. So I'm definitely in the middle category. I have to force myself. No, I was very lucky that when I joined Yellow Pages, it was just incredible training, but everything was about productivity, that you had to be productive. If you didn't get the stuff done on, Monday morning before 10 o'clock and start the day, with that intensity, start the week, you just get left behind. And so that really taught me how to really get things just out of the way, and how, and I like it to sport, if you're aggressive in the opponent's end, you kind of create space in your own end. And I think life's a little bit like that. If you're aggressive at the beginning of the week, you create time at the end of the week, rather than sort of letting this thing sort of build up, and then we're playing desperate towards the end of the week to try and get everything done, which is often what a game can be like if you start slow. So that's kind of my analogy.
That's a perfect analogy, actually. I like that. I played soccer. I live in Hong Kong now. There's a lot of UK influence here, so I'm learning to say football. But yeah, that's a perfect analogy. I really like that. So amongst actually, before we move on, there's something that you said that I thought was really interesting, and this is something that I'm sort of having a personal epiphany about now, and that I'm encouraging my friends that are athletes to consider this. So you talked about how like a CrossFitter can get sort of sucked into that world. And I think it's interesting. Like one of the things about CrossFit, one of the things they started out trying to do, I think, is create a sort of a generalist, right? So I can swim, I can do gymnastics, I can do Olympic lifts. I'm not going to specialize in running or cycling or whatever. And what they've also, I think, maybe unintentionally created is now a specialist for CrossFit. If you can't walk on your hands for 100 yards or whatever, you're not going to the CrossFit games or whatever. And I think this is happening in triathlon. I think it's happening in bodybuilding. It's been happening in bodybuilding. It's happening in CrossFit. It's not just one sport, but I think there's this over specialization that's happening in sport that I think as a coach, I'm interested to hear your opinion on this, because you just touched on this transition that you made from getting stuck in the CrossFit box to realizing that you were going to have more wellness balance if you just worked out from home, at least part of the time. Mm-hmm. I see this as a problem. I see this over specialization where people have to have 20 races on the calendar, or they have to go to the CrossFit games, or they have to go play in 6 different soccer leagues or whatever. And they're doing it to the detriment of their own wellness balance, which is possibly why they got into it in the first place. Are you seeing this?
Yeah, definitely. I've experienced it, and that shift between being passionate about something, being healthy, strong, and being obsessive. There is a fine line, particularly when it starts to become obsessive. Then there's a mindset challenge, or a mental challenge, because it becomes overwhelming, and we lose sight of the things around us, things that perhaps are more important than we realize. It amazes me when I speak to an executive and they'll say, Andrew, I've taken your advice. I've decided to get fit and make some changes in my life. So I signed up for the London Marathon. Why right. did you do that? That, and I appreciate people. We all have a challenge. We love to push ourselves, but you just told me that you're not spending enough time with your family. Now you're going to be running X amount of miles a week. We're going to be talking about food constantly. So I appreciate, challenges. I love a challenge, but we have to find that balance between passion and purpose, and then what becomes obsession, which can be detrimental, I think, on not just us, but the people around us, our close inner circle.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just a matter of time. I mean, I agree. It becomes an obsession, but I mean, if you want to be successful at X, Y, or Z, and you're probably a A or A+ personality type, you're probably going to do the work that's required to be successful at whatever that sport is. And so you know that's going to require a pretty big amount of time. So yes, now you're addressing the physical wellness dimension, but now all of a sudden 70% of your energy or work, as you put it, which I like, is being put over there. And so the others are going to have to suffer. There's only so many hours in the day.
Something's going to suffer. And that's where we lose the balance. And don't get me wrong, professional athlete, you has to be all in and committed, and has different. To be a little bit obsessive. That's different. And you're getting paid to do it. That's your job, to be like that. I don't think I've worked with a top performing athlete who hasn't been obsessive. That's the drive. But for the majority of us who are, got families, who are trying to shape a career, stay healthy and strong, something has to give in certain areas. So that's just my view. And I've experienced that mentality where if I hadn't trained for 2 days, I'm getting weaker, and I'm 33 this year. I'm probably playing better hockey than I was 10 years ago. I really am. I've changed my diet. I feel more focused, but something changes in that I just enjoy the game more. I've lost the obsession, and now I've found the passion, so I'm actually enjoying playing. It's amazing how many times you speak to people and say, how much do you enjoy the game? You go, oh, not much really. I enjoy the training, and I enjoy, some people don't like training, but I like the camaraderie. But actually, when you're in the intensity of the game, some people just don't enjoy it, but I've started to really relish now in that intensity, and I feel like I've got my mojo, my passion back for playing.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting a little sports specific here, but I want to do that since I've got, a coach of your caliber on. There's something to enjoying the training and understanding where your markers are in training for what it is you're trying to achieve. So my hope is, hopefully we don't have 75 races on the calendar that we're training for, thinking about an endurance sport here. Maybe we're just going out and enjoying the training, and we're not having to hit a certain power goal on the bike or a certain average time on the run or something like that. I think that maybe it's just something that I think it's maybe a blessing. I just really like to train. I love to go to the gym and lift weights. I like to just go out for a bike ride or run. And I think, maybe now more than ever, I'm starting to realize that that's what it's about. It's just about getting out there and getting outside and enjoying the training. It's not about, I'm lucky that I don't have to have something on the calendar to push me. I don't have to have, an event coming up that I'm training for. I'm just enjoying the training itself. And I think if people can find the love in the training, you have a little bit better chance of the burnout or the overtraining part of it.
Yeah. 100%. And I know that's not easy for everybody to hear, because not everybody enjoys training that way or gets excited by it. I think you and I are very similar in that respect. I do get excited by training. I mentioned earlier that, I train in conservatory. I've got some kettlebells. I don't have an issue getting up and doing it. I do miss the social element. I think there is something about being in the gym and talking to people. And I think there's something very healthy about that, that I just try and keep in check as well. That just enjoying the process, not thinking that we've got to hit certain markers or objectives, actually improve our overall performance, letting go of that. And that's been my experience. I heard athletes say it all the time in their mid 30s and 40s. I wish I knew, in my early 20s, what I know now. Yes. I would never have trained the way I did in my early 20s. It was easy, some of the stuff I was doing. Ego and vanity and I would have enjoyed the game so much more, but hindsight's a great thing.
It is.
Yeah.
One of the things I always talk about now, which is something I've gotten through many years of coaching, is having an open mind to new ideas and just being okay when you make a mistake and being wrong and just admitting that you're wrong. Like, I don't train clients the same way that I trained them 20 years ago or even 2 months ago, because I'm always picking up new ideas and just, but Paul, 5 months ago you were saying that this is what we should do. Yeah, but there's this really cool new study. Let's just try this. Let's give it a go. That I think that just, there's not many 20-year-olds that have that sort of wisdom. I think it's just something that you gather.
I think it's wisdom, and that's, you can't teach that. No. That's through failures and learning the hard way. You can't really put someone through that.
So we'll help folks as much as we can. So one of the things I want to help people with is understanding which of the keys may be the most challenging. Can you think of your 4 keys, and is there one of those or a couple of those that people tend to struggle with the most? I have my thoughts, but I want to hear what you actually see.
My experience has been that I'll give a keynote talking about the 4 keys, and at the end, people come to me with just such varying degrees of challenges. So somebody will say, I'm all in on my family. I have no problems with my family, my relationships, my social element side of things is all on point, but I just can't get my head around fitness. They just can't. They just can't seem to. It just doesn't resonate with them. Maybe they'll play some 5-side soccer or they'll do something, but they can't really get their heads around, getting strong or something, or training for something. Some people just are very comfortable in their business, but and some people aren't. Some people just can't seem to ahead in their business. They're in a good market, they've got a good product, but for whatever reason, whether it's the entrepreneurial skills, leadership skills, they just can't seem to get their business ahead in the same way someone else is. So the feedback is always very different. I think probably overall, if I was to pull a load of people together, relationships, managing relationships, personal relationships, and running a business. Those two things are probably one of the biggest challenges, because it's so easy to take the people around us for granted, because we think we're doing the right things. We think we're bringing, making money, providing a home, that can often catch up with us.
Yeah, I think I read this excerpt in your book and I really liked it. I think it's the general idea of it is, your family isn't going to, in the long scheme of things, they're not going to care about what car you drive or what house you live in or what area of town you're in. They're really just going to appreciate you spending time with them. And that can be really deflating to somebody that's putting 90% of their time into work and realizing they're just not giving their family any time, right?
Yeah. And it's going to catch up with them. I watched a documentary on Netflix the other day, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he was a very aggressive multi-billionaire, and he was talking about how competitive he was, and how he had houses all over the world, and he was kind of showing off, and he was in Saint-Tropez, and he says to his wife, choose a boat, just choose which one you want, as if. And she said, "You know what? Could you just put the phone away and just enjoy the meal together?" And as he said it, he started crying on the documentary. This guy who's like a real alpha, and realized that. And he says at the end, he says, "If you genuinely think this is going to bring you happiness, this billionaire lifestyle, then you're going to be so disappointed." And we've seen it over and over again. But I don't want to take people to drive away their ambition. But I saw a thing on LinkedIn today. The guy had posted a picture of him with next to his Porsche Cayenne, and he said, "I just bought this Porsche Cayenne. I'm 25 years old, and I've achieved my goal. And this is my story." I wanted to, I didn't know what do I make a comment? I didn't. But yeah, there's definitely more to life than Range Rovers and Rolexes.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to. There's some interesting. Again, we're talking about balancing your life. There's some interesting conclusions that were found. There was a study. It was in 2009. It was in the Journal of Human Resources in Hospitality and Tourism, and there appears to be. And I want to hear your take on this, Andrew. There appears to be a correlation between wellness balance and academic performance. So this was a 3-year study that had about 250 students. And they tracked how they spent their time over a 2-week period. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the time was tracked in 30-minute increments over a 24-hour period. So what were you doing for this 30 minutes? What were you doing for this 30 minutes over the 24 hours? The students were separated into 3 subcategories based on their GPA. So you had top performers, you had moderate performers, and you had poor performers. And the study looked at the students' percentage of time, and these are the 7 wellness dimensions I talked about earlier. What was your percentage of time spent in each of the 7 dimensions? And they compared it to everybody in their GPA. Now, Andrew, I don't want to put you on the spot, but what group do you think had the best overall wellness balance? Do you think it was the top performers, the moderate performers, or the poor performers?
Well, I've done a similar study, and it was quite interesting. But the healthy, the more naturally healthy people, and there's a difference, by the way. Some people just got a good cardiovascular system. We measured their cardiovagal tone. There's a relationship between brainstem and the heart. And the top performers had the highest score.
Yes. Yeah. When I saw this study, I forced myself to not look at this. And every time I do a wellness presentation on wellness balance, I ask people this question. You answered correctly. Nobody answers this correctly, including me. Everybody assumes that the top performers have poor wellness balance. Okay, they're good in school. These are university students. They're good in school, but they don't have a social life. They don't take care of their body. They don't, have good relationships. Wrong, Ola Mola. Top performers had the best overall wellness balance, just like you said. Right. And the interesting thing was they spend most of their time on the physical activity dimension. one of the dimensions is physical. So this is sleeping, eating, and exercise. Now, sleeping, I know that takes a lot of time, obviously, if you're doing it right, but that's big part of wellness balance. Like you really need 8 hours of sleep a night for full. They're saying now in studies, a 2018 study said, if you want to perform at your cognitive best, 8 hours is the minimum.
Mm-hmm.
I find this
makes sense.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And another interesting note was that poor performers, they exercise both more and less than top performers. So it's not like the top performers were all the super fit ones. Of course, you can go off on a tangent and go full focus on physical. So it's just like we talked about earlier. There is a balance between this.
There's a balance, definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is funny too. So some of the students even missed class for physical activities. I've got to get to the gym today. I can't make it to that psychology class.
And they were still better in their psychology. So they were still better academically.
No. So these were the poor performers. So they actually went on to deep
went too
end.
far.
Yes.
Got it. Right. Okay.
One other interesting thing, top performers spent more time than the others in the environmental dimensions, which might lead us to think that they may be a little bit more conscientious or just more aware of everything that they do. So I'm wondering, I looked. I wrote this article probably almost a year ago now, so maybe there's something out now, but when I wrote it, I couldn't find anything on top performers in the workplace. So actually I want to tap into your study that you did. So based on what you've seen and working with the 4 keys and business professionals, do the top performers usually have good wellness balance? When I say top performers, I guess I'm just going to say C-suite execs because they're, moving up the ladder.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be lots of varying degrees, and then also over what period would be running this test on, because something to consider is, they could be doing everything consistently. A CEO of an organization who is very committed to the business, committed over here, and they're relentless, can often still result in burnout. So there is something. It comes back to your point about balance. What I found, the study that we did, it was interesting, was that, and I'm not sure if it's linked or not, but we measured. We used a product called Probiometrics, which was a way to measure the relationship between someone's brainstem and their heart. So how much it's a true reading, really, of their cardiovascular and their it was a year ago now. I'm trying to think what we called it at the time. Their cardiac reserve. So what was very clear in a very small study, by the way. That there were the top performing salespeople had the highest cardiac reserve. So they just they looked after themselves. They took their nutrition fairly seriously. Having said that, there was one guy who was the top performer who was a bodybuilder, and he would train at lunchtime. So he would go and he would do a very heavy, he was all about composition. So he would do a very heavy workout, and his cardiac vagal tone would just plummet. Like his cardiac reserve would just drop so dramatically that there was no way that his cognitive function would be as good after the workout. So often we say, go to gym, work out. You're probably good for your energy, but there is definitely a line that gets crossed where we just push our bodies too far. The group that had the best score after lunch maintained a kind of good well-being score. They actually just went for a walk. Mm-hmm. They just sort of window shopping, just switched off, So I think there's a kind of a line that gets crossed, and we see it in top CEOs where they're so relentless in every dimension of their life that does catch up with them. There's no doubt about it. It's as if they're thriving on anxiety, they're thriving on endorphins, they're thriving on adrenaline, essentially, and that's not sustainable. Whilst their performance might be good for a period of time, that can certainly catch up with them.
That's really interesting. it doesn't have to do with wellness balance necessarily, but there's some interesting research I've seen about productivity and creativity. And that it actually follows in line with our 90-minute rule. So they've found that you can be really, really focused and productive for kind of a max of about 90 minutes. And then you just sort of run out of gas, sort of cognitively, if you will. But they found if you get up and go for a walk for about 20 minutes and then come back, especially if you're working on something that's really creative, you just come back like super gangbusters, super creative and ready to act. It'd be interesting to see. It'd be interesting to see that study that you did with somebody just doing something like a creative or complex project. How they'd be able to complete it. But I really like the.
Yeah, it would be. It's very interesting. I mean, there are so many different factors to consider in these things.
That's true.
But I've started to relish, and I don't know if it's the right word, in laziness. And I want to, but looking at laziness as a way of being okay with it, and just to stop, and because sometimes I'd sit down, I'd be like, why am I laying down watching TV? I should be doing something else. I should be doing, but actually, just going for a walk, just slowing things down. And not realizing that I don't have to, when I go to the gym or train, I don't have to leave everything in the gym. That whole mentality of leave everything in the gym. But actually I need to keep something. I need to keep something for my day ahead. I don't want to, if I want to take my kids, my little boy to play soccer, I don't want to be limping around because I've had a really heavy leg day.
Yes.
I want to be able to sprint and run around with him. So I need to, so my view on things has changed massively that and laziness is probably not the right word, but just sort of easing into a slower pace, slower lifestyle, and sort of taking it all in and not thinking I've got to get to this step and often what I would find is, even as a coach, that my agenda would I'd force the agenda a little bit because I'd want them to be as ambitious, and to push themselves and recognizing that actually that's my agenda, not theirs, and being mindful of that. So I'm quite enjoying that, slowing life down.
Well, it's interesting too, though. I mean, there's research backing that up too. Like talking about leaving it all in the gym, like specifically with strength training, like they're finding now you actually, this speaks to how I train people differently than I do 20 years ago when I just first got certified while I was still in university. I mean, every set was to failure and I'm here to push you. And now they're actually finding like, you don't want to take your body to failure. Yes, you should be 3 or 4 reps away from failure. You should be challenged at the end of your set, but you definitely shouldn't be at failure because then you just end up training your body to fail. I love that. I'm driving some of my endurance buddies crazy. And I've talked about this a couple times. I like to cycle. I love to cycle. And some of my buddies will go out for a good 3 or 4 hour ride, especially on the weekend. And I've completely backed off, from a holistic perspective, from a calorie burning and cardiovascular capacity, trying to build my aerobic capacity perspective. A good hour ride is plenty, man, especially with the hills we have here in Hong Kong. I mean, you're really working hard. And so,
I bet.
But it's hard for, I think some of my buddies to understand why I'm doing that. And I work really hard in the gym, and I started noticing I'm starting to have depleting benefits of my hard work in the gym because I'm just burning too much calories out. And that is, it's a simple, it's a simple explanation to what we're talking about on a much grander scale, which is just trying to find your balance across all the different dimensions. Even just within the physical dimension, there's a lot of things that you have to balance out.
Yeah, I'd really like taking a kind of ancestral approach. That our ancestors, they didn't train, they didn't work out, they just did the work. And they couldn't be fatigued. If they were too fatigued to run away from prey or fight prey, then it wouldn't have turned out too good. So I think it's always leaving something in the tank, always having some sort of reserve. so that we're ready for some action later in the day. That's my approach right now.
I love that. Actually, I really, really like that. Always leaving something in the tank. That's going to be the name of this podcast. I can tell right now, because that's not just about physical, is it? We're always leaving something in the tank. We have these, if you picture it, the National Wellness Institute talks about energy blocks. Mm-hmm. If you burn all your energy blocks on your bike ride or CrossFit workout or whatever in the morning, you're not going to have anything for social or emotional or spiritual. So that is a really nice way to put it, Andrew. That's a beautiful way to say it.
Yeah, it's working for me. And I was turning out to my hockey games thinking, I've got to, I'm 43, I've got something to prove because I'm one of the older guys on the team and I'm still playing at a sort of decent level. So I think, right, for Thursday, I've got to make sure I get in and do my leg workout. If I don't, my legs will be weaker. And I was just making myself more tired, more fatigued, more stressed as well. That was putting my body under too much stress. And now I feel like I've got into some sort of flow, and I'm really enjoying that flow. And it's not always, it's not always like that. I feel like I've lost it a little bit. I've been, in the context of well-being, I've had a bit of flu the last 7 days. I've always prided myself on not getting sick, and I've always, I don't get sick because I look up, it really hit me last week, hence I've got sort of coughing and so on. But yeah, so that's knocked me a little bit. But for the most part, I feel like I've got things in that flow, and when I work with my clients and they find that balance, they really, really appreciate it. It's something, a switch goes on, a realization.
Yeah. And I think part of the wisdom that comes with understanding balance is also understanding that you don't find it and then, oh, that's it, I'm done, I'm ready. Yeah. It's like it's daily, right? It's a daily finding. Absolutely. And so the more tools that you have from me and from Andrew and from the zillion other resources out there, you just take sort of 1% and 2% from everybody and you build your own wellness curriculum, and then you understand.
You make it for you.
Yes,
absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. I want to hear, you've been doing this for a while. I want to hear some of the cool successes you've seen with the 4 keys balance approach that you're giving to folks.
So there are a few case studies in the book. I had one guy who was an ex-England rugby player who'd started his business and had that similar sort of mindset, sports mindset, and very focused, very goal orientated, very process orientated actually as well. So he was very organized in the way he operated, but had recognized that some of the things around those other facets of his life were starting to become a problem for him. But at the same time, kind of it accepted it. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of business owners do, or they try and present it in a way to their partners. And it's not, I'm using male examples, but it's not just males, female CEOs and as well, and business owners. It's the same challenge. And I think we kind of present this idea that you have to accept it. You have to accept that I'm going to work and I'm building a business and everything's going to become good in 3 years' time. And the truth is, it doesn't. It just doesn't. It catches up and the health deteriorates. He was suffering with a bad back, but recognized that some of that was to do with stress. It's not just you blamed it on his rugby days. So I think these things are all these stories are great. Some of them make me quite emotional because some of my people that will I'll see them at a conference and I'll take a picture of me with them and send it to their wife and say, this is the guy. And I always say to them, this was not, you were the catalyst for the change, not me. I just presented an idea. You've gone all in on it. And you've made some incredible life changes. So that's very rewarding. And I think it goes back to our point earlier in the conversation about our fathers and health and giving people an opportunity to kind of have a longer, healthier life by making some of these changes.
Yeah, I mean,
so that's
what if
rewarding.
we could go back and that's what I don't know. It's just kind of I guess it's a woo-woo thing or definitely a social emotional thing for me. But if I could go back, and tell my dad everything that I know now and just see if it would have helped. Like, what if he was in the military? So what if it was like, something that he had to work around, some of the chemicals that he had to work around in the military that caused his cancer? Or was it, the deodorant that he used? I mean, if I could just go back and just give him everything, I wish I could. So that's, I picture him in every one of my clients, and I just do my best to not be incredibly annoying, but just like, here's everything. I want you to take all of this, and please, just use what you can, and what
you can make some informed choices. Here's some data. Here's some evidence. Here's what's going on. And then now make some choices. Try and make the best choices. Yeah.
I heard you say, very good. I'm really, really into mindset stuff right now. I think it's because, I'm really honest with my audience, Andrew. I work on mental strength because I'm mentally weak, especially like social, emotional stuff. Like I struggle with it. I own it, and I've been working on it, especially this last year as I've been studying it.
But that's strength in itself.
Oh my gosh, it is. And so I heard you, I want to hear what you say about this, because I heard you describe mindset as this balance between mentally tough and inner peace. And I didn't really know what you meant by that, but it sounds interesting.
Yeah. So it's having aggressive action, so when we think about mindset and slowing things down, we might not associate it with focus and aggressive action. So the examples I give in my book are SAS, Navy SEALs, who are trained to be aggressive and take out targets. But they've also developed the skill, and there's a lot of work on them being able to engage with the parasympathetic response, slow their breathing down, and have that clarity. And I've only kind of researched, SAS and SBS in more recent years. But when I wrote Managing the Mist, it's all about the mist. We get this red mist, or we get this kind of white mist, which we don't often talk about, where it's like everything just fogs over. And we come on, athletes will talk about they just can't see the ice, or they can't see the pitch or whatever. It just kind of so it's a fight flight response kicking in. So it's that ability to maintain that clarity under pressure, and I think that is a skill that can be learned and developed. I think there is some psychology in there as well, and identifying what people's triggers are. So when we go into that fight flight in sort of irrational situations, then what's the trigger? What's the button that's pushed and caused the amygdala to fire up and release adrenaline to the body and put you into that protective state? Because at a conscious level, we don't want that. At a conscious level, going, I don't want to be going to fight flight right now. I want to be totally present and see everything. But it's this kind of unconscious response. So for me, that ability to be absolutely on target and focus, like I talk about NBA players, and when the game is so chaotic and all of a sudden they have to slow down to make that game-winning jump shot.
Yeah.
That ability to do that. A golfer, when the crowds are going crazy and they've just made the best shot, they've got one more shot to make to win the championship. How do you kind of get into that absolute focus and clarity? So mindset for me is exactly that. It's that ability to slow it down, be absolutely focused. But there's some other work around that, which are unwanted patterns that manifest themselves through our childhood, and that sort of manifest themselves at an unconscious level, that we can undo some of those unwanted patterns, identify some of those triggers, those things that stimulus that puts us into fight flight when we don't want it. When we do the work around that, we can start making sense of some of these things, and then we get some clarity. And I found that very powerful on a personal level. But I know that people that have explored that, it's been life-changing. And often what I find is, it might be from a work perspective, or it might be a sports perspective, but whatever those triggers are, there's typically something at the very nub that's in the middle of the four keys that's playing out. It's playing out across all four keys. So whilst they might say it's a business problem or a sports problem, they recognize through work that it's playing out in their relationships and other areas of their life.
That's interesting. Okay, so if you don't mind, you can be my sports psychologist and maybe even my business psychologist. So I'll tell you a couple of things that I've tried, and you can tell me if I'm, because I understand neuroplasticity. I understand creating a new neural pathway. I understand tricking the brain, and I've tried all of these. Mm-hmm. So I read about fellow UK man, Chris Hoy, gold medal cyclist, an amazing athlete. He used to have some issues with getting in the right mindset, and one of the things his coach worked on him with was called anchoring, which would be, you know, and you probably know this, he would create a positive image in his mind. So for him, since he was such an amazing athlete, I just figured he was probably thinking about the last race that he won, or, you know, being on top of the podium or whatever. And he would tie that to a gesture. So think about being on the podium, and then he would actually grab his left earlobe. So I'd always joke to my friends, if they see me cycling up the mountain and grabbing my left earlobe, they know I'm in trouble. Something's going on. So I played around with that with some success. And then I've tried this neuroplasticity, basically a complete rewiring, saying, what happens to me, Andrew, is I get really hot and my heart rate like spikes when I'm on the bike here in Hong Kong. And then I start to freak out. Oh my God, my heart rate's going through the roof. And some people will say, just don't look at your heart rate. Well, I want to know what's going on. So I'm not going to not look at my heart rate. So then I played around with, it's okay that your heart rate is high. Calm down, take some deep breaths. You know, you enjoy climbing the mountain and pushing yourself. So I've played around with these things with moderate success, but am I on the right track? Am I trying the right things? Or are these just tricks?
Well, they are tricks, and, you know, they are certainly ways to get yourself back into that state. I mean, at the end of the day, regardless, you know, the brain doesn't differentiate from you being on the bike or being confronted by a saber-toothed tiger. It doesn't care. You know, it's just going to respond accordingly to the stimuli. So we think about what's the actual objective in those situations. The objective is to re-engage the parasympathetic response. Is to get the brake back on the heart. So if you take the heart out, for example, you put it on a table, it will continue beating at around 160 beats per minute because it's got its own pacemaker and so on.
Mine would be 180.
180. Going at it, yeah. So the brain, the vagus nerve's responsibility, you know, here is to send that message, you know, to put the brake on the heart. Right. So the stuff you're doing is the right thing, and I think sometimes it helps us to understand the mechanics of what's going on. So there's a couple of things to consider. It sounds like you've identified that looking at the heart rate is the trigger. And then it's kind of trying to just make sense of that and saying, okay, you know, that's okay. You know, that's what's supposed to happen, I guess. But are there some other triggers? Are there some other things that are causing the heart rate to increase other than just exerting yourself? Right. You know, what are some of those other things that might be causing some sort of, you know, fight, flight, or the sympathetic response? And then, you know, the deep breathing. You know, breathing, regardless, you know, anchoring will help, but breathing is the number one way to re-engage this parasympathetic response.
That's interesting that you say that, because I've out of failure of some of these other things where it works a few times and it's not. I've just said, okay, just try some box breathing, or just some in through the nose, out through the mouth, just some deep breaths, and then, just like you said, the heart rate does come down. I think that's sometimes we sort of ignore the most basic things that can help us. That's a good point. Yeah,
maybe that's the anchor for you. You know, is to find a place. You know, whether it's the finger and thumb, or the ear, or something, or even holding onto the bike, something that kind of just anchors you into a more peaceful place. So it comes back to a point earlier: is finding that peace, but with absolute focus that you're going to get up the hill and climb the hill. You know, that there is a target at the end that you're going to achieve, but how do I find that inner peace? So so that I'm not overexerting. I'm not using up too much, because you're going to use more glucose, more oxygen when the body's in that fight flight state, so then become even more fatigued.
Do you recall any situations as a coach, because you coached at an elite level, where you've got your team there and it's like maybe you're in overtime and you're tied and everybody's tired and they're probably at that point where they need to be grabbing the ear. Is there anything that you can think of that you would say as a coach to help them focus and calm down and recalibrate?
For me, I can only know what worked for me, and that is stick to the process. So to trust the process, the tactics, the systems, because that kind of gets them out of their own head. Ultimately, what you want them to do is to get out of their own head. That they are, that they feel safe, that they can add value, that they're supposed to be on the team, all those sort of things that when self-doubt might creep in. So you want to kind of get them out of the head and focus on the implementation, and just stick to the systems, keep doing the work, focus on the process, and then everything else will fall into place in those moments. Anyway, that for me is what's what worked best, rather than kind of looking. I'm not a big fan of enjoy yourself, guys. Just go and play with freedom, because you need a bit of both. You need some freedom and a framework. And I think life's the same. You need some sort of framework that I can work within. But we also need a bit of magic within that framework. And that was always my thing with Team GB, was to give them some sort of level of certainty that they could focus on, so they're out of their own heads, but give them enough freedom to express themselves as well.
I love it. Now, we've heard your 4 keys, Andrew, and you've been a real trooper. So Andrew's just getting over the flu, everybody. He still did the show. I really appreciate you hanging in there with us. I've got one question left. We know you're an awesome coach. You're a business psychologist. You're, working hard on your own wellness balance. What are some things that you do personally to find your wellness balance? I have a feeling we've probably heard a few of them already, but I just want to make sure we close the show on some things that you work on to help, because I think it'll help the rest of my listeners.
Walking is definitely one that, and having me time. I find walking is good for that. Not feeling guilty when I lay down on the couch, that it's okay. Our ancestors would have laid down all day, just filling out, ready for the hunt, preparing themselves. So that has definitely helped. And then I find that I'm more creative. I probably have more thoughts about how I can, have some things I need to do for my family or book something. And so just having that time, booking in time, for ourselves, and not feeling guilty about that or thinking it's going to stop us from achieving our objective. But I found, walking is, and nature. I'm trying to get back to nature. It wasn't really something that I cared for growing up. Wouldn't really consider myself a hiker or something like that. But now I really see the benefits of that, of reconnecting with nature. And I'm hoping to get out this year. Friends of ours were talking about going to Kilimanjaro, because we've got a friend of ours passed away. And we thought we'd walk up the hike up Kilimanjaro we talked about for years. So looking at something like that. But yeah, trying to reconnect with nature.
Those are really good pieces of advice to close on, Andrew. I really appreciate it. And I agree. I think that's something too, I think comes with wisdom is if you go and you put your bare feet on the ground out in the grass or on the sand, you're not going to be sad that you did it. I mean, it's earthing is a real thing, and you can call it woo woo or whatever, but you're going to feel good if you spend some time in nature, or forest bathing is another sort of Japanese term that people use.
Yeah, I had
Yeah, but you're not gonna be mad at yourself that you spent some time in nature. I guarantee you'll feel better. So great advice. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for taking time to join the show. Again, I appreciate you being a trooper, even though you're not feeling 100%. I really appreciate your time, buddy.
Thanks for having me. It's been great. It's been awesome.